please. Oh, very good. I like right when that stops. I see so many eyes that I can lock eyes with, which tells me you're ready to start being a good listener. Boys and girls, you are in for a very, very special treat today. We have a special guest that has been brought into our building who is an actual author. Writes her own books. And we don't get to have that in here every day. So that's why I know this is a very, very special treat. So it's important that we do like we always do when we're in a giant group. And we stay seated on our bottoms. We keep our eyes on the person that's speaking. I look around, you guys are doing such a good job at it right now. Okay? And so I want to make sure she has enough time. I'm going to ask you to take your eyes that are looking at me and put your eyes over here. And let's go ahead and welcome Mrs. Shaw, who's here to present to us today.
Hi guys, how are you? Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I have been waiting to come for quite some time. I've been talking to your librarian, who is fabulous, by the way. And I was just so excited to get to come be with you this morning. I got to be over at Meadowlawn and talk to some of those kiddos, and today I'm going to talk to you this afternoon. I always like to know what's about to happen. So here's what's about to happen. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about writing. I'm going to talk to you about the story behind this book, because this book is nonfiction, which means it really happened. Just really happened. It's a true story. So I'm going to tell you the story about how this happened. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it would be like if you were a kid growing up in China, because some of my kids were growing up in China before they came to join my family. And then I'm going to teach you a little Chinese, okay? I'm going to try so hard to speed through and have enough time for a few questions at the end. So if you have questions, I know this is super hard, try to hold them in your brain and wait for the end, okay? So my name's Jennifer Shaw. I'm an author. I live down in Columbus, which is not that far. It took me about 2 hours to drive up here this morning, and I really loved it because the leaves are beautiful. I love to make stuff. How many of you guys like to make stuff? Yeah, me too. So when I was a kid, when I was your age, I didn't think, oh, I want to be an author. I just knew I liked to make stuff, right? And I am an author, but you know, when I started writing, do you know I did not start by writing books? That's what everyone thinks. Oh, authors write books, and we do. But you know what I started by writing?
What?
Songs. Do you know I'm a musician, and I've written thousands of songs, and I've actually gotten to go all over the world with my songs, which is really fun. But I tell kids, a song is just a 3-minute story. That's all it is. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just like you do in a book, you want a beginning, a middle, and an end. And usually a book and a song, usually when you're thinking about a story, a good story is going to have a problem or something you need to solve. That's usually what's going to happen. There's a problem. In my book, the problem is my kids missed dumplings, and we solved it by learning to make dumplings. You know, there's something that's a problem that you're solving. So I've used writing to do all kinds of things. I've written books, I've written plays, I've written songs, I write for magazines. You can use writing to make all kinds of things. And I want you guys to know, as you're writing, there's not a single thing some kids are like, well, I don't want to be an author. I don't have to be a good writer. But do you know there's not a single job in the world that I can think of that wouldn't be easier and better if you could be a good writer. My husband is a scientist. He has to write all the time. So when you're learning to write, just remember, you are actually learning one of the best tools you can use in your whole life to make stuff and accomplish cool things in the world. So I have 6 kids. This is a lot of kids, I know. So I have 3 kids that we call biological. That means I had a baby and then I had a kid. And then I have 3 kids that joined our family through adoption. And adoption is very normal. Sometimes I meet a lot of kids who have been adopted, and sometimes they think they're the only one. And so I always like to say, if you've been adopted, or if you know people who have been adopted, it's super normal. Do you know there's actually millions of people just in the United States alone who have been adopted? It's just another way to get a family. So it's not unusual. But my kiddos, they needed a new family. And one thing that I always say to kids is if a kid needs a new family, that is never ever anything the kid did, ever. It's always something going on with the adults or the country, or maybe there was a big storm or something, but there's always some other reason. It's never the kid. And that was true with my kids. They did not have a family that was taking care of them, but they wanted one, and they needed one. Now, when they were adopted, they were actually about your age. In fact, 2 of them were older than you. So Ethan, when he was adopted, he was in 3rd grade. When Noah was adopted, he was in 4th grade. Kids are always confused. Noah would like you to know he is seated in this picture and Ethan is standing. He's actually taller. But Noah was in 4th grade, and then Anna was in 1st grade. I know some of you were in 1st grade when they were adopted, right? So I want you to picture in your head, but if it was you, what if you needed a new family? And all of a sudden they came to you and they said, well, we found you a new family, and they're so excited to meet you, but they live on the other side of the world. You're gonna have to change countries. You don't speak the same language. The food's all gonna be different. The holidays are all gonna be different. The houses are all gonna be different. How do you think you might be feeling? I just want you to think it in your head. How do you think you might feel? I'm gonna tell you the words kids say to me most. The words I hear most are scared, worried, mad, sad. I often hear weird, like they just feel like everything feels weird. And then the last 2 I hear are happy and excited. And I'll tell you, those are all the things my kids were feeling. My kids were very happy and excited because they'd always wanted a family and now they were gonna get one, but mostly they were very scared. Because they're like, we can't even talk to him. Like, when I knew I was going to China, I only knew like 6 months ahead, so I didn't have time to learn much Chinese at all. I learned what we call emergency Chinese, which is like, I knew how to say, are you hungry? Do you need the bathroom? Like, I didn't know how to say much. And they didn't know any English at all. So now, kids are always worried about that. Now, I've learned a good bit of Chinese, but they've learned all of English. They're amazing at English. We have no problem talking now. They're fine now, but at the beginning, it was really scary. Now, whatever you're used to in your world, like the foods you eat at your house, and the clothes that you wear, and the holidays that you have, and the way houses look where you live, everything like that is called your culture. It's what you're used to. And sometimes when you go to a place where the culture is really different, it feels really weird, and you have something called culture shock, which just means like everything feels strange. Well, that's what my kids had, because I'll tell you, it's very different in China. If you're a kid in China, I'm going to show you some of that in a minute. And so my kids got here and they missed a lot of things, and one thing they really, really missed was their food, because the food in China is really different. Do you know I have been all over the world, and hands down, Chinese food, the food in China, I should say, is my favorite food I've ever had. But you know it's not really like Chinese food here. If you've had Chinese food here, it's not really Chinese food. You can get it, but most of it is not. It's really something we call Chinese American, and we kind of made it up here during the gold rush. If you want to look that up, teachers, it's a super interesting story. But we made it up. But the food in China looks a little bit like Chinese food here, but it's just amazing. It's delicious. I loved it. And they missed it. It would be like, I'll tell you something secret about China. You ready? The food they don't have, they don't really have cheese. Right? So that means no cheeseburger, no grilled cheese, no mac and cheese, and the one that really scares kids, no pizza. Now, to be honest, that is kind of a lie. You can get pizza in China, but it's not very good and it's very weird. So you don't really want to get pizza in China. But the Chinese food is delicious. So they came here and they're like, all this food is so weird. It would be like you going there and someone saying, pizza? You're never gonna have pizza again. They were like, what? That's how they felt about dumplings. Dumplings are very popular in China. People eat them all the time. It's like pizza here, right? And so they were like, what do you mean you don't know how to make a dumpling? And they were scared. So we learned to make dumplings. So I'm gonna read you the book real quick. Woo! We're gonna try to fly here, kiddos. Okay, so here's the book. I know most of you have heard this, so I'm gonna read it pretty quick, but here are the dumplings. Here's noodles, that's what Anna missed the most, and here's fish, that's what Ethan missed the most. Dumplings Mean Family. Hi, my name is Ethan. I have a big family, and Ethan is saying ni hao, which is how you say hello in Mandarin Chinese. Some of us were born in China, and some of us were born in the United States. When my brother and sister and I were little, we lived in China. We lived in different cities and had different caregivers. We didn't have parents of our own. We ate many common Chinese foods like dumplings and whole steamed fish and noodles. When we got older, our new parents came to China and adopted us into their family. It was very scary to leave China, but I was also happy to have a family of my own. When we got to the United States, so many things were different. The language, the schools, the houses, the holidays, even the people looked different. But one thing that was so different was the food. When we first got to our new home, we were worried we would never have yummy food again. Our parents could cook, but they only knew how to make American food. We wondered why American food came in such big pieces, and why it was also dry without sauce. And why did Americans separate their food into piles and eat with forks? It was too different for us. We missed Chinese food. My brother asked my mom to make dumplings. Everyone in China eats dumplings, but our new mom said she didn't know how. We were shocked. We thought every parent would know how to make dumplings. We thought we would never eat dumplings again. My mom said she would buy some at the grocery store. They were okay, but they weren't the same. They were bland and mushy from the freezer, and they didn't taste right. My mom saw how sad we were. Not having the dumplings we remembered was making us homesick for China. My mom said, let's learn to make dumplings. She asked us about our favorite kinds and looked up different recipes. And then she called her friends for help. We went to Mr. and Mrs. Chung's house to practice. Mr. and Mrs. Chung are real people. They're my very good friends. They live around the corner from us. They showed us how to make fresh filling from scratch and taught us different ways to fold them. When the dumplings were done, they were so delicious, just like we remembered. My mom thought we were ready to try it on our own. She made the filling first, and next she set out stacks of dumpling wrappers for everyone, and little bowls of water to seal them. And then we had a dumpling party. Now I'll come back to this, kiddos, but you can see here I've written these are all the things you would put in some northern style dumplings, which are pork and cabbage. And I wrote it in English up here, and then I wrote it in Chinese right here, which looks really different from English. They use something called characters, which is the same word as a character in a book, but it means something else. It's this kind of writing. And then right below that is something called the pinyin, which is how you would pronounce it. And I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit. All the kids folded and pinched the wrappers around the filling while my parents cooked the dumplings. We ate them while we worked. We tried them boiled and pan-fried and steamed. We ate them with vinegar and soy sauce and chili oil. They were so yummy, and our family laughed so much together as we folded and ate dumplings. Now my family loves to cook so many Chinese foods. We learned to make them all together. We prepared dumplings for my brother and Holstein fish for me and noodles for my little sister. We've also found American foods we like. It's good to like different things.
Good.
My parents say our family is American and our family is Chinese. We are proud to be both. We may be different in some ways, but we are one family. And then here I'll just show you, here's a picture of our family, if you want to see us. Oh, that way. So here is Rinna. She's my oldest daughter, and she did all the pictures in the book. She's an illustrator. She lives in Chicago. And then here's Rachel. She's in college. She's actually in Ecuador right now because she's studying climate change. This is my husband, Nathan. Here's Anna. Here's me. Here's our dog, Kodiak. Here's Toby. Here's Ethan. And here's Noah. And here's our other dog, Pepper. He's kind of hiding because he's the same color clothes as Rinna's dress. I know, everyone says that, right? But I had Pepper and then Kodiak. Yeah, it's a long story. The boys wanted him to have a very manly name. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit of what our kids were used to in China. Because like I said, it's really different there. Here's the first day that I met Noah. We're just in a hotel room in China. This is in northern China. And we couldn't talk to each other. They literally just brought him to our hotel and they said, hey, here's your new family, here's your new kid, see you later. And they left. And we were like, oh, we can't even talk to each other. But you know what? It doesn't matter if you can talk to somebody. You can still be their friend. Like if a new kid moves to school and they don't speak English, who cares? You can still play with them. And that's what we did. We brought a bag of little toys and things because we didn't know what he liked. And we're like, let's just bring a bunch of little stuff and see what he's interested in. And you can see he was interested in Lego. He loved Lego. So we got that out. We just started building Lego. Didn't matter that we couldn't talk.
What?
It was fine. And then He did, as I said, he learned English and we learned Chinese. This is the first day I met Ethan. You can see in this picture we're in an office because Ethan and Anna were in cities that were close to each other, so they said we'll bring them both to the office. So that's what we did. So you can see Ethan picked Uno. I learned all my Chinese colors and numbers from playing Uno. And then here's Anna, and the girls are giving her some little dolls, but actually what we found out she really liked was art. Rena gave her some drawing stuff and she started drawing and never stopped ever since. And then here's the first time we ever took a family picture together. So we had been together about an hour when we took that picture. And you can see on the wall behind us, here's the Chinese writing, the characters, and below it is some letters like we use. But I'll tell you, the letters are only there because we're in a foreign office. They knew foreigners were coming. If you walk around China, you do not see letters. They really don't use them much at all, only if it's a foreign company. So in English, we learn 26 letters and we mix them all up into words. In Chinese, every one of these is its own word. And if you see, they would all fit into a square. And so here, when you learn to write, you guys know how you have that paper that has the 2 lines with the dashes in between? Yeah, if you went to school in China, you would get different paper. Your paper would have squares all over it, and it would have a plus or an X in the middle to help your brain remember where all those little lines go. And you would, in kindergarten, you'd learn your first 100 characters. By the time you finish 2nd grade, you'd want to know about 2,000 characters. By the time you finish high school, you would know 8,000 characters. By the time you finish college, you need to know about 12,000 characters. And they have between 50 and 70,000 characters that you need to know in Chinese. When I was up there, I want to show you what it looked like a little bit. When I walked out of my hotel, if I would turn left, I was on this street, which I thought was so cool. This is not such a pretty street. And the buildings in the back, you can see they look pretty old, right? And that's because this street was super old. This street was 700 years old. And they called this street, was part of something called a hutong, which means old city. Because a lot of China is not old, they've just built it. But when they were building it, they didn't want to knock down the old stuff, so they left it, and the city kind of grew around it. So they called those pockets hutong. Well, this is the big middle of the hutong, but if you start getting along the sides, it gets like a maze, like it gets narrower and narrower, and it looks like you're in a hallway, but outside, because there's big walls with doors in them and no ceiling. And the doors in the walls are the people's houses. So Anna grew up in a hutong, and what she remembers is it was so confusing because it is like a maze. And so when she tried to learn to go to school, she had to count the doors. So she would come out her door in the wall, right? She would come out of her part of the wall, and then she'd have to count 4 doors on the left, turn right. And then she would count 14 doors on the right, turn left. And she did this whole thing to find her way out to the middle so she could find school. Here's one of the doors. Does that look like your front door? Now, some of the doors were really plain. Some of the doors were literally just a door in the wall. But a lot of them were fancy, like this one. And this one was so fancy. I thought it was so beautiful. I'm like, I'm going to take a picture. And actually, you can see the doors are open. If you shut them, they'd just be black doors. You're actually looking into their house. So when I took the picture, the lady came out. That's why the doors were open. And she's like, why are you taking a picture of my house? And I said, because I think it's beautiful. And she said, well, do you want to see inside? And I was like, yes. So we went and turned out this was a very famous house. That's why they had such a crazy door, because this house had been in their family for 700 years. They had just passed it down and down and down. Now kids look at this and they say, that doesn't look like I'm going in a house. That's not inside, and that's because it's not. When you walk in the front door, you're still outside actually. You walk into a courtyard, and then there's little rooms all around the edges, and none of the rooms are connected inside. They're only connected to the courtyard. So if you wake up in the bedroom, in the morning you get up and then you go outside to go into your kitchen room to eat your breakfast, and then you go back outside to go outside to count the doors to go to school. Now that's what it looked like on the left, but what if I turned right? Do you think that would look different? Let's see how that looked if I turned right. Not that one, that one. That's what it looked like. It's the same corner, same city, right? It looks like a totally different place. And with American eyes, we look and we say, oh, We are downtown. Those are office buildings, right? That's what you think, but they are not. We are not downtown. We're actually way out in the boonies. And these aren't office buildings, these are the people's houses. So, and I don't mean like the whole thing. Every one of these windows is a different house. They all live in apartments in the cities. Now, out in the country, they might have a house, but China has so many people. There's so many people in China. They have more people in China than any country in the world. They have 3.5 times as many as we do. And they can't live in about half of their country because they have huge mountains and big deserts, and it's really hard to live there. So they pretty much all live on one side, and so they're all kind of smashed together. There's so many people that they don't have room for houses. My 3 kids, none of them had ever seen a house before they moved to the United States. In fact, we have a 2-story house, our bedrooms are upstairs. Our kids were afraid to go upstairs when they first got home because they thought there'd be another family up there. They didn't know we could have both floors. So if you lived in China, you'd have an apartment, probably. The average Chinese apartment is about as big as this library. It's pretty small. And you have never had a yard, right? Because you don't have room for a yard, but you have a balcony. See, here's a balcony. Noah and Ethan grew up in these big high-rise buildings, and Noah talks about he grew up, there were 4 buildings together that all faced each other with the balconies. And he said most of his school lived in those 4 buildings. So he could go out on the balcony and yell at his friends and be like, hey, meet me downstairs, let's go play. And he thought that was really fun. If you lived in one of these buildings, you probably don't have a pet because there's so little space. Most people don't have a pet. But if you have a pet, it's going to be a cat or a fish or something that can live there all the time. There's very few pet dogs because look how annoying it would be. If you live up here and you have a dog, every time you go down, you have to go find somewhere the dog's allowed to go potty. Every time it has to go potty and go all the way back up, and there's not really anywhere they're allowed to go. So very few people would have a pet dog. They do have them, but not nearly as many as we do. And so when they got to our house, they were so excited we had dogs. They wanted our pet dogs so bad. And the first thing I did was I let the dogs out. They all started to cry. And I was like, why are you crying? And I realized they had never seen a yard. They did not know that the dogs would come back. They thought I was just like, oh, I have so many kids now, I'm so busy, I can't handle these dogs. And I just kicked the dogs out and told them to run away. And then we were like, no, look, there's a fence. They're gonna come right back. So, let's see, you know what, I'm just gonna show you, well, there's a McDonald's in China. This is a grocery store in China. Here when we go to the grocery store here, we get like a week's worth of food, right? And we pay for it all at once. But in China, they go to something called a market, and they have this is its own store. And that's its own store. If I pick up the fruit here, I gotta pay this person, it's their fruit. If I take it somewhere else to try to pay for it, I'm actually stealing it, right? So I wanna pick it up and I wanna pay that person. But right here's another fruit store, it's a totally different store. If I pick up their fruit, I gotta pay them. If I pick up their fruit, I gotta pay them. And you pay for everything the minute you decide you want it, you're gonna pay for it right there. Guys, I think I'm going to teach you a little bit of Chinese and try to have just like 2 minutes for your questions. Okay, so here's the English, hello. Here's the Chinese, and this is what we said, pinyin, remember? See how they have all these weird marks that we don't use in English? Chinese has one really cool thing about it, that in English, if I change the way my voice goes when I'm talking, it doesn't change the words, right? If I say to you, cow, or cow, or cow, it's always cow, right? It still means cow. That isn't true in Chinese. If you move your voice different ways, you will be saying a different word. It's called a tonal language. There's 5 tones. And these marks are telling us the tones to use. So my example to kids is if you say ma, M-A, ma. If I say it high, if I say ma, that's a question. I'm asking you a question. If I say it extended, if I say ma in the middle of a sentence, that's mama, that's mother. If I say it going down and up, if I go ma, well, that's a horse. You don't want to get that confused. You call your mom a horse, right? So when people say hello, when I say to kids, do you know how to say anything in Chinese? They go, I know, ni hao, ni hao, ni hao. And actually wrong. You're not actually saying it right. You gotta go down and up to say it right. So if you wanna do it right, I'm gonna teach you. You go, ni, hao. Try it with me. You go, ni, hao. Yeah, and do you know you're not really saying hello? You're really saying, ni means you, hao means good. You're really saying, you good, you good, you good, you good, you good. It's like you're wishing good at people. Okay? So, and if we want to ask someone, how are you? We say, ni hao, like, are you good? And then you can say, how, good, how, and how. Okay, kiddos, literally we have 2 minutes. So here's what I'm going to say before we do this. If you have more questions and your teacher says it's okay, you can ask me when we're done if your teacher says it's okay. Or teachers, you are welcome to send your questions to your librarian and she can send them to me and I will answer them and send them back. So we have 2 minutes, like I'm going to take like 2 to 4 questions. Okay, who's got to make sure it's a question though, not a story, like something you need an answer to. Do you have a question? He says, how do you say chicken nuggets? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, they don't have chicken nuggets, but how you say chicken is gyro. Okay. What's your question? Who has a question? Do you have a question, something you want to know?
Chicken nuggets.
Okay, I need a question though, not a story, but I will tell you, my kids were a little afraid of dogs at first because they hadn't been with a dog, and so they were a little scared, but now they love them very much. Just got a question, what, where, when, why? Okay, blue shirt right there. That would be Jimmy. Do you have a question? What's your question? They have sports in China. Very good question. They have tons of sports in China. Now, the Chinese sports, like the ones that are really popular, are a little different than ours. Like one that's super popular there is ping pong, table tennis. But they also, like they have famous basketball players. They have some other stuff too, but yes, they play a lot of sports, and martial arts and Tai Chi are coming from there too. I think this is my last question. Red shirt, do you have a question?
Where did you find the Chinese?
Where did I find them? When you need a new family, there's lots of adults that help in that process. And my kiddos were living in an orphanage, but their orphanage was talking to adoption workers here. And so we called the adoption workers here and we said we would like to be a family for some kids. And they said, well, we have some great kids. And we ended up talking and they said, would you like to adopt them? And that's how we found them. And then we had to go to China, obviously, to get them because that's where they live. You guys, good questions. Again, I'll stay here if you want, if your teacher says it's okay. But to end, I'm just going to teach you to say goodbye. Are you ready? Both go down. To say goodbye, you go, 再见.
再见.
We say, 谢谢你, 再见. Thank you so much for having me. It was very fun. Try a new food.